Hey there, I'm Sully, and as always, welcome into the Gun Club. Alrighty, well, I'll tell you, it was kind of an interesting week last week for those of us in the 2A community. Honestly, toward the end of the week, I was looking through different cases, different things that I could bring up, different good guy with a gun. Fortunately, we had no major incidents, didn't really have any nasty active shooter stuff going on. Looked through a couple of cases, looked for court developments to update you from previous adventures that had gone on, things that had happened. I was trying to come up with some ideas as to what to include in the show. Well, we were kind of running light as far as the topic goes. Fortunately, thankfully enough, the governor of New Mexico, a individual, I won't even say a lady, but I'll say an individual by the name of Michelle Lujan Grisham, who is the governor of New Mexico, she decided that she wanted to reach out and give every single 2A channel, every single gun tuber, every single pro 2A organization a little bit of content for this week. And so she decided that she needed to go out and basically do a tap dance on the United States Constitution, for lack of a better term. So we've got a big report out of New Mexico. And the reason it's kind of big, and we're going to go in depth on a lot of it, is I'm not just going to talk about what she did, although I'll cover that quickly. I'm going to talk about the why, and we're going to get into a little bit of the psychology behind this here. And I want to get into the psychology behind it because, quite frankly, I think the psychology of it matters. And I think this incident, we can look at it, laugh at it, and I'm sure a year from now, this will be something we'll all laugh at. But at the moment, we need to look at it critically because it tells us a lot. We can learn a lot from this. And I think there's some very, very teachable moments in here, not only for us on the Pro 2A side, but anyone who watching this who happens to be anti-gun, scared of guns, wants all the guns gone, whatever else, whatever your reasoning is, okay, fine. Maybe you're pro-gun, but you're just kind of anti-crime. There's a lot of people getting shot, and you don't like that. And so that makes you think, well, maybe I shouldn't be pro-2A. There's a lot of the thought process here that goes into it and came into her decision as an elected official to, well, basically do a tap dance on the Constitution, not only of the United States, but also her state as well. Now, she held quite a press conference, and I've got a link to it posted up over on our locals page. If you're not familiar, I do post a lot of things over there that I don't always have room to include in the shows. If you're looking, here's our locals information right down here in the middle. It's thegunclub.locals.com. It's a free site to sign up for. You do sign up for it, you access it. And on our locals, again, I put things there that I can't always fit here. Sometimes I'll put things there that I can't always do on here. Sometimes little humor, different things like that. Different things that I feel may serve our community well, but don't always make all the videos. Also, if you would, please, if you're watching this video, give us a like, pound the little plusy button, the thumbs up, give us a subscribe, share us out to your friends. We're trying to provide not only good information, valid information, but I'm trying to look at it in a way that we can understand not only what someone did, in the case, Michelle Lujan Grisham, but also why she did it. And if we can understand the why she did it, hey, maybe find out a little bit more. You know, and also check out our library on Rumble. We always appreciate hearing from you there. Chat, throw something in the comments. If you have a question about something, whether it be a class or whatever else, you can contact me directly. I put the email out there before. There it is. It's mike.southeastdefense@gmail. It actually comes right up to the phone, and I do try to respond, if at all possible, within a day or so. There is one lady who commented on a YouTube video on Alec Baldwin. I haven't had a chance to finish the response yet. Her comment was 5 pages long, and I'm trying to give it enough response that it deserves, so to speak. So I'm working on that one still, but let's get to New Mexico. Well, on Friday, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham issued an emergency public health order. because of crime and gun violence. Okay. Now, gun violence, I mean, violence bad. So I don't care whether it's gun violence, domestic violence, patriotic violence, bad violence, violence bad. So if you put gun in front of it, we're going to blame the gun for the violence. And that's what she pretty much is doing. But she issued this public health order, and it effectively suspended the right of illegal firearms owners to carry firearms regardless of open or concealed carry, regardless of if you had a permit, anywhere in Albuquerque or the county surrounding it, which is Bernalillo County. I believe I'm pronouncing that correct. Hope I am. Those of y'all in New Mexico, if I'm not, throw me a rock in the chat. I'll take my admonishment. Now, she stated that she feels that this is within her power because she's declared a public health emergency. And in the press conference, again, the link is over there. You can check it out. It's 40 something, 50 something minutes. And she actually states that she feels that, well, no, the Constitution isn't really absolute, and her oath of office isn't absolute, and she can do what she wants because she's the governor and she said so. Now, we'll talk in a little bit about how dangerous this is, but it was kind of poorly received by the 2A community, as you'd imagine. In the press conference, she announced the measure. She was asked point blank by a reporter, and I love the question. Do you actually think that like criminals and bad guys are going to obey this order? And she said, well, no, but I think it's going to make an impression. Okay. First off, right there, big one. She did something to infringe on the civil rights of people in her state, in Albuquerque and Bernalillo County, and potentially other counties. Not because she thought it would work, not because she thought it would do anything about crime or bad guys. She just wanted to make an impression. Lady, I feel sorry for your husband. You did something that you knew would not work just to make a point. Okay, we've got a problem with that right there. If she thought it would work, if she thought this makes sense, if she really thought it would like help, I could cut her a little bit of grace. But Michelle, sunshine, ain't working, girl. Ain't working. You know, and please don't think I'm being disrespectful to her. If you Google her, do a little research on her, and you find out what she's done to some of her campaign staffers in the past, some of the things she's had to have six-figure settlements for, you'll understand maybe why I'm not going to give her a whole lot of respect. But she went on to say in this press conference that kids on the street can walk around with automatic weapons, just not handguns. Kids on the street walk around with automatic weapons. And there were numerous law enforcement officers sitting at the table with her, and none of them said a word. And you could tell they were sort of like, oh, God. You know, you could see the looks on their faces. It kind of looked like a hostage video. And she has this great plan that she thinks is going to help. Okay. But she said it wouldn't. But it's going to make an impression. So she's going to do something that's questionably illegal. And she had even admitted that it may well not stand up under court scrutiny. But she's going to do it to make an impression just because she can do it. Like I said, lady, I feel bad for your husband. Now, in this press conference, she cited 3 incidents that pushed her to make this happen. First one, September 6th was the most recent one. Traffic was leaving a minor league baseball game, the Albuquerque or New Mexico Isotopes, and there was a road rage incident. Now, an 11-year-old child was tragically killed, and his 20-something aunt, who had taken him to the ball game, was wounded. Someone had opened fire from one vehicle into their vehicle. Now, if we think about the big scope of things on this, and I'm going to be pretty blatant on it, I'm willing to bet that the person or persons involved in this shooting who were in the other vehicle are not your average 2A supporters. They're not your average legal gun owners. They are not the people that we'd usually see out there talking about their rights or protecting their family or their business or defending their home and property. I'm guessing this is idiotic gangbanging thug, you know, basically 50 Shades of Stupid, for lack of a better term. do you really think that these people would be affected or care about Ms. Grisham's public health order? I'm betting no. I'm betting no. Just my thought process. Now, second incident she mentioned, a 5-year-old little girl tragically shot while asleep in her bed when shots rang out in a mobile home park. Came right through the wall and killed her. Now, there were 3 other children also present in that trailer, but fortunately they were uninjured. There was a grandmother watching these children when these shots come running through the wall. And apparently, according to numerous neighbors, gunfire in that neighborhood is a fairly normal thing every night. Okay? More enforcement, more aggressive enforcement, more policing, saturation, shot spotters. I can come up with a lot of things. Trampling the Second Amendment because of something like this, again, she even admits it won't work. Now, this one happened a while ago. It was August 13th. I did some research on this. 4 teens have subsequently been arrested as a result of this incident, charged with murder. These teenagers were 15, 16, and 17. Now, based on their nature of juveniles, we can't get any information about their previous records or how many run-ins they've had with law enforcement before. Maybe this is their first rodeo. Maybe 1 or 2 of them it is. Maybe I don't know. They were driving Kia Souls. Kia, little soul car. They were both stolen the night before from across town. Okay, so more saturation, more law enforcement, more aggressive enforcement. We need to put the thin blue line to work on chasing down stolen cars. If Kia Soul is stolen a lot, apparently it is in New Mexico, don't know. But if that's what it is, we need to get the cops aggressively doing that. That might do some good. But for teenagers with guns, well, we've talked about, getting guns off the streets. These kids are not 2A supporters. I'm willing to bet that none of them bought their guns legally. Stolen guns, likely. 15-year-olds can't buy guns. Although she says they can buy automatic weapons, but, 50 Shades of Stupid. Okay. But we've got young kids running around with guns and stolen cars. I think we could look at the juvenile justice system. I think we could look at the court system. I think we could look at a lot of things. Trampling the Second Amendment and telling law-abiding citizens that they have to leave their weapons at home and be defenseless? Nah, it doesn't seem like a real winner. The last one. Now, this one's a little bit interesting. A 14-year-old boy shot a 13-year-old girl. He had gotten his father's firearm. They were at the 14-year-old's house. There were a couple of other kids there. And although the father was not home at the time of the incident, he returned shortly afterwards. Subsequently, both the father and son have been arrested, taken into custody. Not sure the status of those cases, but it is what it is. Now, this one's interesting. We're going to put a public health order in that people can't carry their firearms anywhere in public. Even if you want to go to the range, it has to be like unloaded, locked in a case, and in the trunk of the car, because public health order, and it's going to somehow stop this. Now, if she was talking about pushing safe storage requirements, pushing keep guns out of kids' hands requirements, I could probably live with that and say, okay, I don't like it, I'm not a fan of it, but she's at least trying to address the problem. But she brings up these 3 tragic cases: an 11-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 13-year-old who tragically lost their life as a result of an incident regarding a firearm, all of which could have been prevented by the laws that are already in place. And what does she do? She stands on the bodies of these dead children to put out this public health order because she's going to do something. She stands on the bodies of dead children. She's using them. She knows that this law will do nothing for these events. She knows that the association of this law to these events is nothing. But she can go out, hold a press conference, and talk about how dead children, she's going to help them with something she knows it won't. She got her 15 minutes of fame. I don't know if she's running for re-election this November. Don't know, but she can tap dance all over the Constitution while holding up the bodies of dead children, naming their families, and that's why she's doing this, while admitting this wouldn't have stopped it. So she just brings those children up for what? Because she can. Lady, you're sick. You're very, very sick. And I'll say it. Now, gets even interesting. According to her, this ban on open or concealed carry, regardless of your status, does not apply to law enforcement, of course, as well as licensed private security personnel, but anyone else can be subject to a fine of up to $5,000. Now, as you would think, in order for the governor to issue this edict or this directive or this royal proclamation, someone buy this idiot a crown. I'm trying to keep my language G-rated here, YouTube. I'm sorry. This ain't easy, I promise you. But in order for her to do all this, she brings all these cases up that have nothing to do with it. You'd think she'd have to have some law enforcement support. Well, the law enforcement officers who were sitting at the table with her, many of them have come out and said they are not going to enforce this action. They see it as unconstitutional. The Albuquerque mayor says he will not expect his police department to enforce it. The Albuquerque Police Department chief says his officers will not be involved. The Bernalillo County Sheriff has pushed back against it, and I have got an amazing video from him. That's why I bolded that out. Sheriff John Allen, I have so much respect for you, and I want everyone to hear what the sheriff said, the high sheriff of Bernalillo County, the one who's dealing with all this stuff. I think it was real interesting. He had a great response to it. And then a day later, the president of the New Mexico Chiefs of Police Association says, this isn't going to work. This makes no sense. So now, these three people, I'll take the police chief, the sheriff, and the president of the Chiefs of Police Association, all know something about law enforcement and about dealing with the law and about how to deal with criminals. Does she ask them? Does she come up with a great plan with them how to deal with this and how to fix this problem? No, she didn't. She comes out, John Wayne, with this, pretty much stupid, and then she kind of gets her hand smacked a little bit. She did state that she'll have the New Mexico State Police just do it. Now, I don't know what they're going to do, if they're going to flood the New Mexico State Police, pull them out of everywhere else in the state. It's a pretty rural area. There's a lot of territory for them to cover, and dump them into downtown Albuquerque to deal with crimes that these other agencies are already dealing with. Again, if she wanted to talk about improving juvenile justice or something else or anti-drug or something, I could deal with it. But anti-gun because of what? Well, there's so much crime, we need to disarm the good private citizens and see what's going to happen there. Now, I got this clip for you. It's from the...
Clear. I hold my standards high.
This one
and I do not
really
or
great.
Never will
I hope you can hear it.
Hedge on what is right. And I take my oath seriously. In reference to concealed carry and open carry, the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Office will not enforce this segment of the order.
If you can't hear it, and I will...
While I understand the urgency, the temporary ban challenges the foundations of our Constitution, but most importantly, it is unconstitutional. My oath was to protect the Constitution, and that is what I will do. The governor made it clear in her press conference. She knew we as law enforcement did not agree with the order, and as a result, this was solely her decision. Other than this ban being unconstitutional, here are other reasons why I will not enforce the order. One, what many forget, is I have enough violence here in Bernalillo.
And I've got to say, I have all the respect in the world for this guy. He makes so much sense. And again, I love this. One, what many forget is I've got enough violence here in Bernalillo County. I've got enough to do without trying to deal with this stupidity. I've got enough on my hands. I've got enough crime without turning law-abiding citizens into criminals because the governor has decided to, well, for lack of a better term, take a big old dookie on the Constitution. Yeah.
Bernalillo County. I do not want to have political violence towards my deputies or here in Bernalillo County. My job is to keep the peace and to make sure that the citizens of Bernalillo County are safe, and I do not believe that this order will help me do so. I'm a law enforcement professional.
Audio on this.
This order will not do anything to curb gun violence other than punish law-abiding citizens from their constitutional right to self-defense. Let me give you a personal story. Last week, as I'm sitting here as the sitting sheriff, I get a phone call that my brother also was a victim of gun violence last week that many of you do not know. While he and my nephew were sitting in their car, they were shot at and their vehicle was impacted by numerous rounds. How can I, as a sheriff, tell him to put his firearms away and not be able to protect himself? I have a fact for you. Criminals do not follow the law or...
Well, we believe that criminals do not follow the law or public health orders. I think that says it all, folks. Criminals are not going to follow the law or a public health order. How many times have we said it on this channel? Folks, in the 2A side, we need to remember that refrain, that mantra, every time we get people trying to pass these insane, for lack of a better term, I think borderline insanity here, gun control acts, when it doesn't make sense. The first question we need to ask is the question that reporter asked during the press conference: do you really believe that criminals will follow this law? And if she says no, why are we doing it? He says it. And Sheriff Allen, I have the utmost respect for you. Folks, if you live out in that area, stand behind this guy. He's a Democrat elected sheriff, okay? She's a Democrat governor. He may catch a little bit of heat from the Democrat side for taking this stand. But the stand he took was to protect his constituents, his citizens' civil rights, to protect their ability to protect themselves. Crime has gone crazy, so let's disarm all the good people. He realized that. He stands up for the good people, and if he catches any heat for it, hopefully, we can support John Allen. Because, sir, I've got a lot of respect for you.
Public health order. Never seen it, we will never see criminals follow the law.
About it.
Once again, this only punishes law-abiding citizens. Standards high, and
what more can I say about Sheriff Allen? The utmost respect for the gentleman, and if the audio, I'll check it later. If it didn't come through well on that, I will go ahead and I'll post that over on our locals page as well. I know you can see the subtitles on it, but so law enforcement kind of weighed in on it. Now, this is her response to law enforcement, and I'm going to blow this up a little bit bigger, because let's say if we're going to try to determine how to make things work, quote unquote, I don't need a lecture on constitutionality from Sheriff Allen. What I need is action. So do something, whether it infringes on civil rights or not, I guess. I don't know. What we need is for leaders to stand up for the victims of violent crime. We need law enforcement, district attorneys, public officials, school leaders, and state agencies to use every tool at their disposal to stop this violence, period. She goes on to say, we've given you the tools, Sheriff Allen. Now stop being squeamish about using them. I will not back down from doing what's right, and I will always put the safety of the people of New Mexico first. And I think that's great. I think that's wonderful. I wish, for our sake and for the sake of other people out there, that she would put the constitutional rights of her citizens and the people of New Mexico first. Put the civil rights of her people first. Now, we all know, if you don't, I'm going to quote the Second Amendment real quickly here. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, to start off at the militia, The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not only keep as in to own, but bear as in to carry, to bring to bear. The right to bear arms in our defense shall not be infringed. So, this is in the Constitution. There's a lot of things in the Constitution. If you look, the Eighth Amendment to the Constitution, for example, talks about how we cannot have cruel and unusual punishment. There's amendments to the Constitution talk about how we have a right to a speedy and fair trial by a jury of our peers. We talk about the Fifth Amendment. That's the one that says, you cannot be forced to testify against yourself. You know that whole thing about you have the right to remain silent? Okay. The Fourth Amendment. If you're not familiar with the Fourth is a big one. It's the one that protects you from unreasonable search and seizure. It's the one that says, you know what? If the police show up at your door and say, we're going to search your house, you say, do you have a warrant? They can't just search your house because they've got guns and badges and said so. The reason I bring these other amendments up, and again, the second is the one she trampled on. But if we are going to say that a public health emergency is good enough to suspend the Second Amendment in those counties, how about we suspend the Fourth Amendment in those counties? Would that make sense? We have such a bad drug problem around here. Police no longer need a search warrant. They're going to show up and kick down your door, and anything they find in your house, they can use. And oh, by the way, when it comes to arresting you, you no longer have the right to remain silent. That fifth, it's an emergency. So we're going to take away that Fifth Amendment. Can we beat a confession out of you? Yes. And you say, well, wait a minute, I have the right to have an attorney present. No, that was one of those amendments. If we allow the executive of a state, whether it's Michelle Lujan Grisham, or in the case of the federal level, our chief executive would be Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., or any executive, to sit there and say, you know what? The Constitution is optional if I declare an emergency. You know what? We'll take those two 15-year-olds, the 16-year-old, the 17-year-old. We'll tell them that they don't get an attorney this time around, and we will torture them on the courthouse steps. Imagine that. Think about this. This is what would be happening without the Constitution. Is torture illegal? Yes. No cruel and unusual punishment. But if we say that there's an emergency, then we're going to tell law enforcement they're allowed to beat confessions out of people. And it's perfectly acceptable. And if someone is guilty of something, we can just torture them on the courthouse steps. Do we go to what they're doing in some Middle Eastern countries under the strictest Sharia law? I'm sorry, you were caught stealing. We shall now cut off your hand. Because there would be no constitution to protect citizens from that. Anyone who ever thinks that, law enforcement is against them or overreaches or, cops are totalitarian fascists. It's those protections in the Constitution, the ones that are snuggled up right next to your Second Amendment, that are the ones that tell the cops they can't beat you until you confess to the crime. The ones that say you have the right to remain silent. The ones that say that you have the right to an attorney. I'm sorry, these kids involved in this shooting, it's an emergency. They get no attorney. We will beat them until they confess to whoever did it. And then whoever did it will be tortured on the courthouse steps because it's an emergency. Governors, mayors, presidents, chief executives, anyone who feels that this type of constitutional overreach is within their purview, they're not only stupid, folks, they're dangerous. They are the most dangerous thing in the world. And you can say that, President X is mean, or President Y is Hitler, or President so-and-so did this, that, and the other. Just remember, that Constitution is what allows you to say that. If we were in a society without a Constitution and without civil rights, say in North Korea, go over there, criticize the president. Someone comes to your house and puts a bullet in your head. Bye-bye. Why? You criticize the great leader. That is punishable by death there. Go to China, talk about civil rights. Hell, go to Canada and talk about civil rights. You can be arrested for speech in Canada, in England, in France. Our Constitution, including that Second Amendment that some people aren't too keen on, is what protects their right to do it. And you know what? Some of the people right now may say, well, we can restrict it and we can restrict speech and this, that, and the other. Folks, if we restrict speech, we've got a big problem. Because while you may be really happy with what goes on now, I want you to think back, and I don't try to get real political, but I'm going to mention this. A while back, there was a guy in office that a lot of people didn't like, kind of orangey fellow. And people would show up and protest him. I saw balloons of him with a diaper calling him a big baby. I dare you to go to North Korea and do that about their dear leader. Do that about President Xi in China. You and your family will be taken out. We can say he was a Nazi, fascist, Hitler, this, that, and the other. No. Anyone who does any research and looks back, if Hitler was in power and you criticized Hitler, things didn't end real well for you. So if you've ever criticized a politician, current or past, and you are still alive and the state has not come killed you, it's because of that First Amendment. Our right to keep and bear arms is right next to it. And it's sacred as the other one. The right to not be tortured, the right to an attorney, the right to not be searched unlawfully. And yet, she doesn't need a lecture on the Constitution. She's going to do whatever it takes. And she trampled it. Now, it's not just me saying this. That's the fun part. Let's see who else agrees that she overstepped. Well, the New Mexico Attorney General. Now, interestingly, he is a Democrat, much like her. He was appointed to office by her. She appointed him to his position. Wrote a letter to her Monday, stating that this will have no meaningful impact on public safety. Further stating that he will not defend any cases brought against this. Which he states it flatly violates the state and federal constitution, quote unquote, does not pass any constitutional muster, is not justified, nor will it work. So not only are you destroying the Constitution and breaking the law, breaking your oath of office that you swore to uphold and defend the Constitution of New Mexico and the United States, it's not even going to work. Michelle, honey, not good. Now, when we look at the further legal backlash, there have been numerous lawsuits filed since this happened. This happened Friday. There was a temporary restraining order, a TRO there on the bottom, issued today in the first case. Now, folks, if you look at those set of abbreviations there, if you're not familiar, NAGR is the National Association for Gun Rights. FPC, Firearms Policy Coalition. GOA, Gun Owners of America. SAF, Second Amendment Foundation, and multiple private citizens filed these suits. Folks, why did they do this? Where did this come from? Well, basically, they all realized it was a problem. You look at the streams over the week, it's been kind of fun. There have been a couple of 2A attorneys who have come right out and said, if you live in this area and you get picked up or you get this fine or you get this citation, please call me. I will get you paid. Michelle, what were you thinking, girl? Major problem. Beyond this backlash, the legal backlash, we've got more. There were multiple rallies over the weekend that basically flaunted the order. Open carrying, long guns, firearms, sidearms, whole 9 yards, and multiple scheduled for the week and the weeks to come. There have been numerous calls for her impeachment, not only by Republicans, but also by some Democrats as well. There have been multiple U.S. senators requesting that the United States Department of Justice and the United States Attorney General Merrick Garland intercede in the violation of rights of the New Mexico citizens. And some people have suggested that she could well be arrested for impinging on people's rights under color of law. It's a civil rights violation. I believe it was 18 USC 242. They came up and basically said if somebody uses authority or color of law to infringe on someone's rights, that they can actually be arrested on a federal charge. It's been suggested that this is possible, likely not probable. I'd say the stretch. It's the 2% maybe could get to that point. So there's been a pretty big backlash. But is it only Republicans? Actually, it's not. Got a couple of other ones to share with you here. Let's look at, this one is Ted Lieu. If you're not familiar, Ted Lieu is a Democrat. He is, pretty much anti-gun. This is from his Twitter feed. Quote unquote, I support gun safety laws. However, this order from the governor of New Mexico violates the U.S. Constitution. No state in the union can suspend the federal constitution. There is no such thing as a state public health emergency except to the exception to the U.S. Constitution. Meaning, regardless of what kind of public health emergency you think it is, this ain't it. You can't do this. Someone comes back, despite the respect I've had for you, you're off base. She unquestionably has the authority to do this. Ted Lieu comes right back on them the next day. The U.S. Supreme Court issued the ruling last year. Whether or not we agree with the decision, it is the law of the land. A governor cannot suspend the Constitution for any reason. I don't agree with Ted Lieu on a whole lot of stuff. But in this case, Ted Lieu, I got to give you A+. You did right on this. More power to you. Now, you can go even further. If you're not familiar with David Hogg, now David Hogg is anti-gun. He is not a fan of the 2A crowd. He's not a fan of the pew-pews. He's gone to the range a couple times, and I'll give him credit for what he's tried to learn and tried to understand and experience, but he is still definitely not a pro-gun person. He comes out. I support gun safety, but there's no such thing as a state public health emergency exception to the Constitution. Now, David Hogg and I don't agree on much. David Hogg personally would love to take everything out of my safe and take it away from me and make me a bad boy for having it. David Hogg doesn't think civilians should own guns, but he realizes that this ain't the way to go about it. So the fact that she has done something crazy enough or off the chain enough to get me to agree with David Hogg, honey, you did good, Michelle. You really did. Got to give you credit. So there we are. Where it sits right now, the TRO has been issued today by a judge who states that they're restraining all law enforcement from doing anything with this. Chances are this is not going to last for long. But the thing is, let's take a minute and think about why she did this. Okay. First of all, I'm not going to say she was stupid, although I have my doubts at some moments. I will say this was manic panic. This was OMG, all this stuff happened, and this is what we hear after some of these events, unfortunately. Oh my God, would somebody do something? We've got to do something. She admitted it won't work. The sheriff came right out and said it won't work. She sat at a table 5 feet from that man. Did not ask him about it. No, she knew it wouldn't work. But it's that manic panic. Got to do something. We see this a lot. And this is a great case of it. And it's a great example in a bubble. Because it's something so off the chain. So beyond the pale of, logic. Something bad happens. Something really, really bad happens. And those kids getting killed and other people getting shot and crime, I agree, it's bad. And those kids should not have been killed. And yes, it was tragic. And the fact that the 20-year-old is still in critical condition and the 11-year-old went to the ball game with his aunt, that's awful. But we cannot ever allow our emotional upheaval, our emotional trauma, our emotional whatever you want to call it, from something really, really bad happened to turn into, I have an idea. Let's tear up the Constitution. Let's tear up the law of the land. You know what? This thing was so bad, we can suspend the Constitution. We don't do that. Trust me, the founders had seen a lot of emergencies. The founders had just come through a brutal war when they wrote the Constitution. And this brutal war, where we sent the King of England and his soldiers packing, as well as their German conscript, the Hessian army, they had seen emergencies, but they did not want those emergencies to infringe on the rights of a free people. They didn't want those emergencies to do anything to make us subjects instead of citizens. Remember, under Britain, we were subjects, subject to the king's rule. The king could do what he wanted. If the king's men showed up to your cottage and said, "We want to search," you had two choices: let them search or be shot. If they decided they wanted to take you back over to England for a trial because you had badmouthed the king, so be it. If they told you to turn over all your weapons and all your muskets and all your gunpowder, it came as a decree from the king. You had no right to question that. The king said so, you did it or else. When our founding fathers, again, reading back through the original text, history, and tradition of the Constitution, they said, no, this place was going to be different. We're not going to be Canada. We're not going to be Mexico, and we're sure as hell ain't going to be England. We're going to be the United States. These rights are not given to us by government. These rights are given to us by God, by our founder, by our creator, and they shall not be taken away by government. The Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, does not tell us what our rights are. It's not meant to give us rights. It's meant to tell the government, both state, federal, local, anything else, what our rights are, that they shall not infringe, step all over, etc. Michelle, you don't understand. And as far as whether or not she needs a constitutional lesson from a sheriff, Michelle, you can watch the video. You can check some of my constitutional writings. Yeah, you do need a constitutional lecture because what you did is atrocious. And there is no such thing as an emergency. And the fact that you've caused me to agree with Mr. Lou and Mr. Hogg, that hurts me, Michelle. That hurts me deeply. Trust me. And then again, I'll give hats off to those two gentlemen, because for as much as they may not be pro 2A and they may not agree with me on a lot, they get it. They get we can't tear up the Constitution. So, all righty. Well, that is all I have got for today, folks. I appreciate it. I thank you for your time coming in. I wanted to do a quick little special here, just trying to follow up from this whole week in New Mexico. We're still trying to come up with some more on the Chapel Hill shooting, trying to find out what the relationship between them was. We know there was a relationship. Not sure where it is. Folks, if you like this, if you appreciate this, please hit the like button, share it out, give us a little help in the algorithm. Hopefully we can get, the numbers up there. I'm working on some really cool swag. It's already, some of it's come in, some more of it's supposed to come in this week. We're trying to do some giveaways on the channel. If we get the numbers up, we barely hit 209 followers on the Rumble. We're about 15, 16, 18 on the YouTube. If we can get the numbers up to about a 250 total, we're probably going to have a little bit of a drawing on one of the streams for some cool swag. I've actually got a couple of our friends giving me some stuff to share out there with people. Folks, I appreciate it. Thank you much. You have a wonderful day. And please, be smart, be safe. Bye.